So let's talk about mystical meditation. We know that meditation is important. We know that early in PB's career, he was one of the first Westerners to introduce the idea of meditation to the West and to adapt it. And he says, the truth needed for immediate and provisional use may be learned from books and teachers, but the truth of the ultimate revelation can be learned only from and within oneself by meditation. Truth is not outside, truth is inside. And the way we contact the truth inside of us is through the practice of meditation. He also says, among the values of meditation is that it carries consciousness down to a deeper level, thus letting a person live from their center, not their surface alone. The result is that the physical sensory reactions do not dominate our outlook wholly as they do in animals. Mind begins to rule them. This leads more and more to self-control, self-knowledge, and self-pacification. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can see that very often we act from the surface and not the depth. Very often we act superficially and not in a way that is true to ourselves, to what we feel or know inside. And the practice of meditation helps us align with this inner truth so that we are less likely to deviate from it or betray it. We could say we betray our deeper selves. Mm-hmm. When this meditation becomes deeper, which PB calls advanced contemplation, he says, continuous remembrance of the stillness accompanied by automatic entry into it is the sum and substance of the short path. Under all circumstances, this is to be done. So most of us are not capable of entering the stillness at any moment, but that is the goal of the advanced practice of meditation, to be able to do that.
And the meditation helps us to find this silence, where really live the overself, give it to us the opportunity to calm down our thoughts. And we know that between each thought has a space, and in this space live the overself. And it's said also that illumination is there, like the illumination is the practice to have the opportunity to experience this interval entre one thought and another thought. And really meditation provides this need.
So if you think of a musician who has to practice until the piece becomes natural, or an athlete, we really need to develop our spiritual muscles. We need to develop the different aspects of our spiritual selves and not be lazy. And if you've played an instrument or been in a sport, you know that it's very easy to want to not practice and to take a break, and that it could be very frustrating, but that the benefits are clearly worthwhile. And it's the same here. So let's talk about rational reflection as the third.
Why do you think is important, the rational reflection?
Why do I would like to give a rationally reflective answer to that question.
Okay.
So we tend to think that we need to transcend our minds or not think in order to be spiritual. And it's certainly true that what we call the lower mind, the everyday habitual mind, is not going to give us wisdom. But there's another aspect of the mind, which is PB is calling rational intelligence, or what the Greeks refer to as reason, that can also lead us to the truth. And we could think of this in mathematics. If you remember when we were learning theorems in mathematics, you would prove a theorem by going through certain steps, and you were using your reason. Science is a very good idea of using reason, right? Galileo used his reason to perceive that probably the sun does not go around the earth. Mm-hmm. So to answer Grant's question, the faculty of higher reason is very necessary for our spiritual enlightenment and development, and that is not to be confused with the everyday faculty of what we would call opinion, where maybe we just say what we read in the news, or we spout off something we heard from our parents or someone else, but we haven't really thought it through. So
Yes,
does that answer your question? Are you satisfied with the answer?
in some way.
In some way, okay.
Possible, we are speaking here then about the Buddhic aspect of the mind, that level a little more higher, that belongs to the subtle bodies, higher subtle bodies, and it's some place where the overself then could like express or send the intuition thoughts, the higher intellect, and know exactly the concrete logic in Mana's mind, where we live, we need, of course, for our daily life, but isn't about that you are speaking, correct?
Correct. So Gran is using the terms buddhi for the higher mind and manas for the lower mind, which is from Hindu philosophy. And now let's read PB, and then probably Gran will be willing to agree with that 100%. So PB says, the intellect's finest function is to point the way to this actual living awareness of the overself that is beyond the intellect itself. This it does on the upward path, the long path, the path of development. But it has a further function to perform after that awareness has been successfully gained. That is to translate that experience into its own terms and hence into ordinary, comprehensible ones, both for its own and other people's benefit. So we could use PB as the example because PB was a very well-trained writer, and we have his books as his gift to us. But if he hadn't developed his intellect, if he hadn't developed the ability to write, he wouldn't have been able to communicate his realization and his understanding. The intellectual study of these truths is not without great value. It prepares the seeker for their eventual realization, nourishes the soul, strengthens the higher will, and encourages finer hopes. Moreover, holy reverence is born of itself as one meditates on the picture of universal intelligence which thus unfolds before their gaze. So this is interesting. When we develop an intellectual comprehension or insight into the infinite complexity and intelligence of the universe, then reverence will arise naturally. We will be in awe of what we know. So the two will become, let's say, blended. Last quote on rational reflection. If a person will constantly think about these metaphysical truths, they will develop in time the capacity to perceive them by direct intuition instead of by second remove reflection. But to do this kind of thinking properly, the mind must be made steady, poised, concentrated, and easily detached from the world. So here we see PB saying to really develop rational reflection, you have to be able to concentrate, which means you have to meditate. So all of these are interrelated. They're not separate. And, people are critical of the lower mind because, as PB said, it's a second removed reflection. But PB's telling us you won't get to the deeper truth unless you develop a deeper understanding of it. And then you can go beyond the mind and perceive the truth intuitively.
Possible with all these reflections, meditation, understanding, possible our moral aspect or behavior or attitude in daily life, time will change. What do you think?
So that's the ethical piece.
The ethical piece.
Moral re-education.
Because if I know who am I, may I do bad things for others and for myself, for the world? What is my attitude, when I know the truth?
So, for instance, many of the spiritual teachers say that I was reading Blavatsky, who said, a spiritual seeker can never lie. You can't see the truth. You can't seek the truth and not tell the truth. But of course, when we're embarrassed, when we're insecure, when someone asks us a question, we don't know the answer, we have this egoic tendency to pretend that we know or to tell something that we don't know. And we really can't do that. So that's what PB calls moral re-education. And he says, the pursuit of moral excellence is immeasurably better than the pursuit of mystical sensations. Its gains are more durable, more indispensable, and more valuable. And we see in PB's own life, if we read his books, for instance, Search and Secret India, we see that he encountered many mystics who were capable of profound yogic states of meditation who were not ethically developed or who were not morally responsible.
And then generally they go down, correct?
Then when they don't have this moral development, even if they've had a higher realization, they can't hold on to or keep this realization. The philosophical discipline seeks to build up a character which no weakness can undermine and from which all negative characteristics have been thrown out. So another thing our egos like to do is make excuses for ourselves, right? Gran might point something out to me and I'll make an excuse for my behavior. Phoebe's saying, accept responsibility and change what is weak in your character. He says, you have to find out what unwise tendencies are operative in your character without your knowledge, what wrong impulses arise from your subconscious self and lead to harmful actions. Here we also see the benefit of psychology. Even though psychology does not always offer us a spiritual path, psychological understanding offers us a means of self-understanding of our egos and characters so that we can transform them.
Also, because if it is character, the moral has to be with our ego, correct? And of course, if we want to be a whole being, like to prepare to receive and to live the truth of the Overself, of course, this will be one point of the star that will be unbalanced. Then this star can't be completely, balanced, and couldn't the flow from the Overself that is in the center. He couldn't spread in the whole star.
If you think of a kite or one of those stars that spins, if the stars aren't equally balanced, it doesn't have a regular flight.